My hand was already on the door handle when I heard my mother-in-law say my name. Not the way she said it when I walked into the room. Not warm, not welcoming. The way you say someone's name when you think they can't hear you. Like the name itself is a problem to be solved. I stopped breathing. I had come downstairs for a glass of water. It was past midnight, and the baby had been pressing on my bladder all evening, and my husband had said he'd be up in an hour, and that was 3 hours ago. The kitchen light was off. The living room light was on. And through the crack in the door I could hear two voices that I had trusted with my entire life. She doesn't need to know the timeline, my mother-in-law was saying. She just needs to get to the due date. And if she figures it out? That was my husband's voice. Low, careful, she won't. She's not looking. I stood in the dark hallway in my socks on the cold hardwood floor with one hand on my stomach, and I felt my daughter move, just once, like she was telling me something. My name is Hallie. I was 28 when I married my husband, and 31 when I found out who he actually was. I want to be honest with you about something before I start. When people hear stories like this, they always ask the same question: how did you not see it? And I used to get defensive about that. Now I just tell the truth. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking. Not because I was naive, not because I was stupid, but because when you love someone and you build a life with someone and you sleep next to someone every night, you extend a kind of grace to them. You fill in the blanks charitably. You assume the good version. That's not a flaw. That's just love. But I'm a licensed CPA. I've spent the last 8 years auditing corporate accounts for a mid-sized firm in Charlotte. My entire career is built on noticing when numbers don't add up. And the moment I stood in that hallway and heard my mother-in-law's voice drop to that register, something in my brain that I had been keeping very politely switched off for 3 years quietly turned back on. I did not go into the kitchen for water that night. I went back upstairs, got into bed, and lay there in the dark doing math until 4 a.m. Let me back up. I met my husband at a fundraiser for the Arts Center downtown. He was tall, steady-seeming, the kind of man who introduces himself to everyone in the room and remembers their names. He worked in commercial real estate. His family owned a property management company that his grandfather had started and his father had grown, and that he was supposedly next in line to run. I say supposedly. We dated for 2 years, got engaged at Asheville in October at a bed and breakfast his mother had recommended. Got married in June at the venue she had also recommended. I thought she was helpful. I thought she was involved because she cared. His family was old Charlotte money, not flashy but solid, the kind of wealth that doesn't announce itself. His father had died the year before we met, and his mother had become the gravitational center of everything. She ran the family the way she ran the properties, with a quiet iron grip and a calendar that accounted for every variable. I had a good relationship with her, I thought. She called me sweetheart. She told me she'd always wanted a daughter. She sat with me through my first trimester when the nausea was so bad I couldn't leave the house, and she brought me ginger tea and saltines, and she held my hand when I cried because I was exhausted and terrified and grateful for the pregnancy I had almost given up hoping for. I thought she loved me. I know now that she loved the baby. Those are two completely different things. Here is what I pieced together in the dark, starting from that night. My husband's grandfather had left the family business in a trust. Standard stuff, except for one clause that I had never been shown, had never thought to ask about, had never imagined would be relevant to my life. The clause stated that the controlling share of the company could only pass to a direct biological descendant of the founder. My husband was the only living grandchild on the eldest son's line, but there was a condition. He had to have a biological child of his own before he turned 35. He turned 35 in 4 months. I was 32 weeks pregnant. And up until 18 months ago, we had been told repeatedly by 2 different fertility specialists that natural conception was extremely unlikely for us. We had started the paperwork for IVF. We had talked about adoption. We had grieved together, or I thought we had grieved together, in the particular quiet way that couples grieve things that don't show up on the outside. Then I got pregnant. Naturally. In the way the doctors had said was very unlikely, and my husband had seemed overjoyed, and his mother had cried. And I had thought, sometimes bodies surprise you, sometimes things work out. But lying in that bed at 2 in the morning with my daughter moving in slow circles inside me, I started doing a different kind of math. I thought about the appointment 6 months ago when my regular OB had been out sick and I'd seen a covering doctor I didn't know. I thought about the blood work that came back with a notation I'd asked about and been told was just a lab formatting thing. I thought about the prescription my husband had picked up for me in the early weeks, and how he'd been so insistent about me taking the supplements, how he'd set alarms on his phone to remind me, how he'd watched. I thought about how much I had trusted him. I thought about my daughter. And I thought, if there is something in those records, I need to find it before he does. I want to be careful here about how I tell this part, because what I did next was not dramatic. It did not look like a movie. I did not sweep into a lawyer's office with a flash drive and a determined expression. I got up at 5 in the morning before my husband woke up, sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and my pregnancy pillow, and a cup of decaf I'd been pretending to enjoy for 7 months, and I started working. I called my OB's office when they opened and requested a complete copy of my records, including all labs, all consultation notes, and all third-party communications related to my care. Under HIPAA, that's my right, they said 3 to 5 business days. I logged into our joint bank account and started going through transactions from the past 2 years. And then I called my sister. This is the part where I want to address something directly, because I have told this story before, and the first question is always, why didn't you call someone sooner? Why didn't you ask for help? I did. I called my sister that morning. I told her something was wrong and I didn't have proof yet, but I needed her to know where I was, and to check in on me every day and to not tell anyone, especially not anyone who might mention it to my husband. She said, "Give me an address and I'll be there by noon." She drove 4 hours from Raleigh. She sat at my kitchen table while my husband was at work. She did not panic. She drank the bad decaf with me and helped me go through every transaction line by line, and when I started crying somewhere around hour 3, she just handed me a tissue and said, "Keep going." I kept going. What I found was not immediately obvious. That's the thing about financial deception. The people who are good at it don't take money. They move it. They reframe it. They make the numbers technically accurate while completely misrepresenting the picture. My husband had a separate account I didn't know about, not illegal on its own. Plenty of couples keep separate accounts, but this one had been opened 3 years ago, right around the time we'd first started talking to fertility specialists, and for the past 18 months, regular transfers had been going into it from what appeared to be a medical consulting firm. I'm a CPA. I know what a shell looks like. The medical consulting firm had one registered agent. The registered agent's address was a mailbox service in Fort Mill. The firm had no website, no reviews, no employees listed anywhere, no business presence I could find. But the registered agent shared a last name with the covering doctor I had seen, the one time my regular OB was out. I sat with that for a long time. I did not confront my husband. I did not let on that anything had changed. I kissed him when he came home. I asked about his day. I sat across from him at dinner, and I watched his face the way I had learned to watch accounts, looking not for what was there, but for what was missing. That night, after he fell asleep, I went back downstairs and I stood outside the living room and I listened. My mother-in-law had come for dinner and stayed late, as she did most nights now. They were talking about timing, about the birth plan, about a private room at a specific hospital in a specific wing that she had apparently already reserved under a name I didn't recognize, a name that wasn't mine. I will tell you exactly how scared I was, because I think you deserve to know. I was not the dramatic kind of scared you see in movies. I was the kind of scared that makes you very, very still. The kind that slows everything down and makes every decision feel like it costs something. My hands were not shaking. My voice was not shaking, but when I got back upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed and felt my daughter move again, I put both hands on my stomach and I said, out loud, very quietly, "I've got you. We're getting out of here." The next morning I called an attorney. Family law, but with a background in financial fraud cases. My firm had worked with her before on a corporate case, and I had her card in my work bag. I explained the situation in as plain and factual a manner as I could manage. She listened without interrupting for 11 minutes. Then she said, "Don't touch the account. Don't move anything. I'm going to make some calls." She made the calls, and 4 days later, she called me back and told me that the covering doctor I had seen had surrendered his license the previous year, following an investigation in South Carolina. He was not supposed to be practicing medicine anywhere, and yet his name was on the consulting agreement, and yet he had seen me. She said, "We need to bring in someone else," that someone else was a federal agent. The thing I keep coming back to is the supplements. They tested clean. I want to be clear about that. Whatever my husband had planned, whatever role the doctor was supposed to play, the supplements were exactly what they said they were. The working theory, which I can't share all the details of because it's still tied up in legal proceedings, is that the plan was less about what had already happened and more about what was supposed to happen at the delivery. The reserved room, the private wing, the name I didn't recognize. I won't put all of it in words because I don't have words for all of it. What I'll say is that when the federal agent explained to me what they believed the arrangement was, I felt a cold so specific and so complete that I've never felt anything like it before or since. It had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. I want you to understand who my husband was to me. This was not a man I'd known a short time. This was not someone I'd had doubts about. He had held my hand in 2 different doctors' offices while we talked about why we might not be able to have children. He had cried, real tears, the ugly kind, the kind you can't fake, or I had believed you couldn't fake. His mother had sat across from me at my own kitchen table and told me that family was everything, that she would always be there for me, that I was the daughter she had never had. And the whole time, there was a room reserved somewhere with a name that wasn't mine on the paperwork. I moved in with my sister 2 weeks before my due date. I did not tell my husband I was leaving. I did not give him the chance to talk me out of it or to call his mother or to do whatever the next step in whatever plan they had was supposed to be. I packed a bag on a Thursday morning while he was showing a property, and my sister drove up from Raleigh in her SUV, and we loaded everything I needed into it, and we were gone before noon. I called him from the road. I know about the rooms, I said. I know about the account. I know about the doctor. And so does a federal agent. He was silent for so long that I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, Hallie, I can explain. You can explain it to them, I said. Don't call me. I hung up. I cried for approximately 40 miles. The ugly, gasping kind that my daughter probably felt because she went absolutely still for the first time in weeks and then moved in a slow circle like she was settling in, and I put one hand on the wheel and one on my stomach and I said out loud, again, I know. We're almost there. My daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in April at a hospital in Raleigh, in a room with my sister and my mother and a nurse named Patricia who had the most calming voice I have ever heard in my life. She weighed 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had dark eyes that looked at me with an expression that could only be described as extremely unimpressed, which I respected. I named her on my own. I had been trying to decide for months, going back and forth, asking my husband what he thought, deferring, compromising. Sitting in that hospital bed, just the 2 of us, I looked at her and I knew immediately. Her name is Wren. My husband was arrested 6 weeks after she was born. His mother was arrested the same day. The doctor, the one who had surrendered his license, was already in federal custody in South Carolina on an unrelated matter, which is how the investigators had found the trail in the first place. The details of the charges are public record, and I won't walk through all of them here. What I will say is that what they had planned involved the birth, the documentation, and a set of circumstances that would have made it extraordinarily difficult for me, legally and practically, to do what I ultimately did. Walk out of that hospital with my daughter and never look back. They had accounted for a lot of variables. They had not accounted for me going downstairs for water. They had not accounted for my sister driving 4 hours without asking a single question. They had not accounted for the fact that I spend my professional life looking for exactly this kind of discrepancy. People ask me how I'm doing now. Genuinely, not as a pleasantry. People who have heard the story pull me aside and ask what they're in a particular way, and what they're really asking is, are you okay? Like, actually? Wren is 7 months old. She has 4 teeth and a strong opinion about sweet potato puree, pro and bedtime, con. She has learned that if she looks at my mother a certain way, my mother will pick her up every single time, which she exploits without remorse. She is the best and most exhausting thing I have ever done. The house in Charlotte is in the middle of a legal dispute. I don't care about the house. My attorney does on my behalf, and she is very good at caring about it in my place. I went back to work 8 weeks ago, part-time, remote, for now. My firm held my position. My colleague sent a gift basket when Wren was born that had approximately 40 types of cheese in it, which is exactly the kind of gesture that makes a person feel genuinely known. Am I okay? Yes, not in the way I was before. Before, okay meant unaware. Okay meant trusting. Okay meant not knowing that the people at your table could smile at you with one face and plan against you with another. Now okay means something harder and something better. It means I know what I'm capable of when I have to be. It means I have a sister who drove 4 hours without asking why. It means I have a daughter who looks at me like I'm the whole world, and I look back at her the same way, And every morning when she wakes up and makes her very specific complaint noise, and I go in and pick her up and she immediately grabs my hair in her fist and holds on like she'll never let go, I think. We got out. We got out and we're okay, and the sun is coming in through the window of our apartment in Raleigh and it lands on her face exactly right. And she squints at it like it's an inconvenience, and I laugh, and she looks at me and she laughs too. That's whole story. That's all of it. That's enough.